Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 328. Yeah, of the Orange Pill Investor. Market's coming back to life. So I thought that song was appropriate. I think we listened to that one. I'm gonna date myself. I think it was a like a Walkman cassette player, and we listened to that one on the back of the bus in high school, like every day for like a month straight. Um, Yeah, so the title of this one is "My Covered Call Strikes Are Getting Wrecked, and I Love It." It's kind of giving me an excuse to remove leverage. So if I end up having to close a bunch of these long calls that I held on to in November that I should have, I took some profits back then, but I should have taken a ton more. My account's probably up 5%, like exactly the same amount that MicroStrategy is up. If I didn't have any covered calls on, I'd probably be up 10%. So I may have limited my upside just in today's, profits, by half. But you can only look back and say, "Oh, well, if I would have known, then I wouldn't have put them on." That's the thing, you never know. So, I'll probably add on a couple of more positions, and I'm gonna go ahead and just jump on it before the market crashes again. I think I I talked too long yesterday and took too long to eat breakfast yesterday and missed the the daily top. But, let me just go ahead and sneak a couple of these on. Damn it. I was literally signed in 5 minutes ago, and it decided to, expire as soon as I start the video, of course. So I'm just gonna quickly take a look. I've still got about, let's see, so I have 1,900 delta here. Well, my net delta is 3,600, and I'm just gonna add up all the covered calls. So I'm gonna round this to 3, 450, another 350, 800, 950. Looks like, damn it, this one is the debit spread. Yeah, 950. So I'm not going to count this one. Yeah, I have about 1,000 delta, well, basically negative delta in my short positions. So if I add that all back in, before I sold covered calls on this stuff, I would have about 4,600 delta. And if I was going to do like a 60-40 split, that would be, let's see, if I just round to 5,000 delta, what would that be? 6/10 of 5,000, so about 3,000 delta. So I could actually add probably another 20 covered calls here and still have a bunch of upside, or a fair amount of upside. So I will add a couple of positions, and you can even see my net negative, or my net theta is actually negative. So all of my long call positions are are technically losing me more money to theta decay every single day that I'm gaining, even though I have 5, 10, 23 covered calls on. Um, yeah. So bottom line is I'm gonna add, let's just do 5 positions. And the funny thing is I'll probably be taking these off. Well, I may not be taking them off. So my intention was, if we were sitting around 325 tomorrow, I was gonna take these positions off and then do some kind of gamma squeeze-ish play on Thursday for Friday. But If we're just gonna pump for the rest of the week, then I'm not gonna do that. So let's hit at the money. I'm just gonna go right at 360, and I'm gonna add 5 positions. And I need to do some research and figure out what the difference between cash and settled cash balance is. How much did I just collect? I just collected 5 times 950, so that's 45, 47.50. Yeah. I can't tell how much of that cash is real, but since the price is up, relatively speaking, over the past week, I'm not inclined to buy more leverage. So with that 4, 5-ish grand, I'm gonna go ahead and buy shares. Let's see, 10 shares, 3,500. So let's do 15 shares, 14 shares. Okay. I like that. So we will see what happens over the next couple of days, and hopefully we'll be at 450 a share, and all of these covered calls will get completely wrecked. If they do, I will continue to roll them out. That will provide some credit, and then once I've rolled these positions to next Friday, well, so the thing about next week is that might put us like very close to the blackout period. And I kind of didn't want to hold much leverage over, excuse me, I didn't want to hold as very many covered call positions over the potential blackout period ahead of earnings, just in case there's some upward pressure. Yeah. Okay. I'll have to think about that on Thursday and Friday. But for now, this works for me. Let me check the chats before I move on to the IRA. Oh shit. I've been talking to myself. Oh, okay. Yeah, I always get paranoid about that because I had a couple of technical difficulties where I talked for like 20 minutes with a black screen and no audio, or was it black screen and audio? Anyway, had a couple of technical glitches. Cup holder says cassettes were annoying as fuck. Couldn't figure them out as a kid. Yeah, we always had to use the old pencil trick to roll them up when they. Yeah, Niz, my bad. I forgot to go full screen. George says cash settled requirements have boned me many times. Yeah, I gotta figure that shit out. There's no excuse in in trading, and I don't even understand some of the basic mechanics of the platform. Jeremy says, "Can the gamma come anyway? It's too late to cancel the plans we made." So it can. There's no reason why it can't. It's just that I don't really. Uh, I don't really understand, the technical analysis and how to figure out if one should or shouldn't happen. So I've basically just been keeping one eye on Josh's analysis, and so if we're not sitting at the 325 tomorrow, then it could be a whole different scenario, and there could be this maybe the squeeze launches from there, but I would just be placing a very small trade anyway if I do one. Uh, but if but if that doesn't happen, I'm already just sitting on so much leverage. I don't need to add I don't need to add a separate, like, gamma squeeze trade. Uh, I've got a metric ass ton of leverage, and approximately half of it is still uncovered, so I'm totally fine if the gamma squeeze comes a day early, that's perfectly fine with me. But Ivy rank is still down to 35.5. I would assume, you know, if this just gets out of control over the next couple of days, we would see an IV rank spike to go along with it. So adding a few positions, but not really just aped into them. If we see IV rank pegged at 100 again, I will probably go to like 100% of my positions will be either covered or I will simply just take off long positions, period, and reduce the number. Not all of them necessarily, but all right, again, I've got 600 net delta. I've got 5 covered calls. I've got 300 shares and 2 leaps. That means I can sell 5 covered calls for sure. And it's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna see the only way that I would be able to sell another covered call in this account would be if Tasty Trade is going to give me credit for these 4 leaps that are not even in the money. Generally, you're gonna be selling covered calls against calls that are in the money, like these 175s. So I'm gonna try to do it. If it says that I don't have enough collateral or whatever, then it's not letting me set this up as a ratio spread. So this will be a fun little experiment. So let me try to sell the 365. I'm not trying to buy 100 shares. There we go. Okay. So Tasty Trade was sophisticated enough to know that I've got 5 covered calls against 300 shares and 2 leaps. That's perfectly fine. And that I have so much unlimited upside delta here that I can afford to sell yet even another covered call. So that's pretty cool. My net theta was it already positive? Nah, maybe barely. I think my net theta was barely positive. Let me go back here and check my, okay, so adding those 5 covered calls on my main account took my net theta from negative to extremely positive. If I had checked that, maybe I wouldn't have added so many, but that's fine. Alright, so I'm inclined to leave that here. These covered calls getting wrecked. These covered calls getting wrecked. And, you know, some people who sell options, they're just super paranoid about having their strikes threatened because they don't want to get shares called away. And if you only own 100 shares, that's perfectly reasonable. But you have to you have to be okay with it because there's no way to fix this. You know, a lot of times people will sell a covered call, the price goes up the very next day, it's worth twice than what they sold it for, and they're like, "Okay, now what do I do? How do I how do I fix this? How do I make sure my shares don't get called away?" And there's no way to fix it. Uh, the the only thing that you can hope for is that, let's say on expiration or the day before expiration, you wanna try to roll. You could try to roll out to, this is only gonna let me go to 30 days, but, you know, it's called rolling out and up, and so you can just choose a strike that gets you so going in the wrong direction. At the money would give a decent credit, but if all you wanna do is just roll out to a higher strike and just not lose money, then you can go all the way to the 410, and you can you can try to keep doing that and wait for the price to go back down, but eventually, if MSTR went to, like, 650, 750 in short order, you'd be, like, trying to roll out to, like, frickin' June or something to try to to try to roll for a credit, and that still might work out, but there's diminishing returns once you go out past 45 days to expiration, and then even more diminishing once you go past 60 or 90. So there's no way to fix it, but you can kind of try to cope. But I have so much leverage and unlimited upside that's not covered. Having some of my strikes get breached is the least of my worries. All right, let's check out the joint account. My MSTR delta is almost 300, so I could potentially sell 3 covered calls in here, but I think the last time I tried to add one, it didn't give me credit for these. So I'm just gonna try it again, and let's see what happens. Oh, you know what? I forgot to spend that cash from the, that I just generated in the IRA. Okay, so it's letting me this time. So I don't know, maybe I was doing something wrong before, but now I have 960 bucks to spend. So, I don't think there's enough money there to dollar cost average into anything. So I'm just gonna add some shares. With 960 bucks, I can't get 3 shares, so let's buy 2. Right, the IRA, I've got 1,100 to play with, and that's probably 3 shares, right? Okay. So in general, if I'm selling covered calls and the price is up, I don't necessarily wanna buy leverage with it, so I'll buy shares. If I'm selling, covered calls and the price is down, then maybe that dip is a better use of buying long calls with the premiums. I would say after the next pump, instead of kind of trading in and out of leverage and shares with MicroStrategy, I will start adding in Tesla positions. But I'm waiting for that next big rally to make any significant moves in that direction. All right, so this will be fun to watch. See what happens before Friday. And then I believe this is a cash account, and I only have 123 delta, and I've got one covered call on. So there's nothing I can really do here. Let me check the chats before I switch to the 5K account. Niz says, what is your plan with MicroStrategy if we get a bear market? Would you take profit and sell stock? So I have some basic assumptions, and those assumptions may not be true. Like one of my basic assumptions is that the 4-year cycle will continue and that we will enter a bear market in 2026 and 2027. Um, and the reason that I'm assuming we will enter a bear market is, I know there's a lot of hype that maybe Sailor and MicroStrategy buying Bitcoin can just have a perpetual bid, and this will be a super cycle and Bitcoin goes up forever, whatever. But I don't, because I still believe in human psychology. I don't think it's going to be any different. Maybe I should just be looking at Bitcoin. So people are still going to FOMO at the top. And so whether the next top is 250,000, or if because governments and corporations and everybody's just buying Bitcoin, maybe the top is 500,000, or for, amazingly, maybe it goes to 1 million. Whatever the top is, there are people who are going to be FOMOing in and buying the top. I mean, Sailor has said that he's going to buy the top forever, but I'm not worried about him because he's diamond handsing this shit. But there's going to be a bunch of people who are new to the space, and I've even had people who follow me and they're like, "Oh man, you know, I should have got into MicroStrategy earlier last year," and then they're FOMOing into it, but they don't even believe in Bitcoin, but they are seeing the returns that MicroStrategy is getting, and then they FOMOed into freaking MSTR probably in November, you know, and then they're like, "Oh shit, now they're down." Well, when you've been holding an asset for 30 days and you're down and you're already panicking, and you just can't wait to break even, like you can't wait for the stock to go back to 400 so you can just sell. Like, you had no basic assumption about the asset that you're owning. So I still believe that whatever Bitcoin blows up to, there's going to be people, and not just FOMOing in at the top, but like FOMOing in with leverage that they can't diamond hands even if they wanted to, because they'll be 10x leveraged, or ton, what 100x. What a Sailor says, people who are like 100x leveraged over the weekends, trading this shit. So it's going to get pumped to astronomical numbers that the market can't handle. And what, if this thing blows off to a fucking million, it's gonna unwind to 500,000 or 400,000, but not overnight. So it may take a year and a half for all of that shit to unwind. So I don't see human psychology like behaving any differently anytime soon. I could be completely wrong, but everybody has to have an assumption, and that's one of mine. So my goal for the end of 2025 is to have about 3,000 shares, and there's no mathematical number attached to that. But back in March, right here, I had 300 shares pre-split. 100 shares got called away. So I would have 3,000 shares if I didn't bumfuggle this trade back here in March 2024. So I'm playing a little bit of a revenge fantasy. I want my shares back. Um, and I could totally buy them right now. Like I could just, without margin, I could just go completely, if I dumped all of my leverage and just went straight shares, I could get my 3,000 back, but, I will unwind that at some point. So I'd like to be in a situation end of 2025 with 3,000 shares, no leverage, no margin, no loans. I borrowed like $110,000, uh, 70-ish in signature loans, another 30 from my HELOC, and 10 I had a paid off SUV, and I went ahead and basically refinanced it, and they paid me 10 grand or whatever. So I'll pay off that 110 grand. So I won't have and I won't have any credit card debt, and I will just be sitting on shares, and I will be aggressively selling covered calls into a bear market. If we don't enter a bear market, if my assumption is incorrect and we get a super cycle, then a shitload of my shares will be getting called away in 2026 and 2027, and that will be fine too, because at that point, the profits will be so astronomical that it just won't matter. So, getting getting covered calls or shares called away in 2026 because my assumption that the bear market is coming and it doesn't, that's a good problem to have, I think. Oh, but and the other half of that is anything left over, and I may not be able to get to the 3,000 shares, but I'm assuming I will be. But anything beyond that, I will probably have in Tesla. So if my portfolio is an ETF, right now it just has one ticker in it, and I will diversify into a two stock portfolio of MicroStrategy and Tesla. I was all in on Tesla before Quant Bros won, and I was already heavily invested in MicroStrategy, but that's when I really felt like I kind of understood what could potentially happen with it. Uh, so over the course of 2025, I peeled off all of my Tesla positions and just went all in on MicroStrategy. And if we, ahead of a potential 2026 bear market, I will re-diversify back into one whole ass additional stock. And if I can get to like 50-50 MicroStrategy, Tesla, that would that would work out. And then I'll probably just rebalance. If the 4-year cycles continue, I'll just continue to rebalance in and out of those two positions. If I ever find something that's like MicroStrategy or Tesla that I'm as that bullish on, maybe I'll add a third ticker. But um, until I've been made aware of something as good as either of those positions, for me it'll just be those two. Colin says, worried about Bitcoin only when galactic war breaks out. Yeah, yeah, but if we have a galactic war, I don't think you could probably get off planet without Bitcoin anyway. I think the Fermi paradox. I think a reasonable explanation for the Fermi paradox is that if a civilization gets nukes before Bitcoin, or doesn't get Bitcoin before they annihilate themselves with nukes, that's probably why most intelligent species don't get off planet. Dr. Tone, what are your thoughts and opinions about dividend captures, especially with Misty? So I had a bad take. Let me read your next comment too. Um, I'm not sure about the states, but my Canadian Amazon MasterCard had a 0% rate with a 1% transfer fee as long as you pay the $10 a month and then pay the full amount at the time the offer ends, or else they'll collect retro interest, which gave me 11,000 temporary loan from November 2024 to July 2025. Yeah, I I've basically been doing the same thing. Now, prior to this year, I was rolling my credit cards from 0% offer to 0% offer, probably $50,000 worth of it. And um, Hermes Lux actually made that a strategy. I think he intentionally went out and put money at 0% on his cards and just bought MicroStrategy with it. I think it would probably even work with Bitcoin. Um, but I'm gonna probably pay all of those off. We'll see. That way I can just completely reload with dry powder, and if 2026, 2027 we get another bear market, then I'll just load up again as much, uh, as much uncollateralized debt as I can possibly get my hands on. I will, I will definitely leverage up again, especially with a credit card, like, what are they gonna do? So MSTY. I had an unfavorable review of MSTY just because they charge a management fee. So I kind of feel like why let them sell covered calls when I could just do it myself and not pay them the management fee? However, um, and on the most recent call on True North, I think I said something along the lines that they've underperformed MSTR itself. Because if you look at, I think MSTR went up 3x over the last, whatever, 12 months. Um, and I think MSTY was only up like 2x or something. Like, but if you had taken the 10% dividends and bought more shares of MSTY, then MSTY basically had a very similar performance to MicroStrategy. But, you're exposing yourself to all of the taxes. So, if you're getting 10% a month and you raise that to the 12th power because you're reinvesting all of your dividends back into shares, that's a common thing that dividend investors do. And you end up getting like um, compound interest gains. So 10% a month over 12 months, if you're reinvesting all of the profits, actually will get you a 3x on your money. So MSTY is actually a little bit better than I thought. Um, but I still think it will probably underperform. I kind of just feel like anytime there's a management fee, it has to underperform. I don't see anytime you introduce a middleman, unless they're just better at executing the strategy. But I mean, it looks like they sell mechanically into the environment. So they're selling covered calls into low prices, into high prices, into low IV, into high IV. But I mean, they got to have some intelligent people there. I'm sure they're executing it properly. And when I did a review, I was like, okay, all of their positions seem reasonable, but they also did sell covered calls out beyond like 3 months. I think they were selling some at like, I could be wrong. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say when I don't remember exactly, but I think they were selling days to expiration longer than I personally would. And but yeah, I think that MSTR is the solution for every bullish strategy, and MSTY is executing a bullish strategy, so it'll print money. I just don't know if it can compete with, even just holding spot MSTR. Kevin says, "Have you ever considered becoming an accredited investor and buying into SpaceX or XAI?" Um, I thought about like going back to whatever, getting financial advisor so that I don't have to come out here and say not financial advice all the time. Like if I am a financial advisor, I can actually give it, I suppose, legally. But uh, I'm not sure I want to take any courses that I'm just not interested in. The only thing that really kinda interests me right now would be something along with learning AI or maybe game theory or something like that. So maybe I'll go back to school for something that I'm interested in. But becoming an accredited investor, I mean, do you have to take some kind of course or get certified, or is it just proving that you have enough money to be able to afford it? I don't know that I even have enough net worth. I don't know if SpaceX and if they would be even interested in my net worth. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't get into any AI plays. I mean, I guess they can make money short term, but um, when I listen to Jeff Booth, I'm just constantly having revelations, and he basically says that what prices trend towards the was it what does he say, the marginal cost of production, I think, and AI is lines of code writing lines of code. So what's the marginal cost of production of a line of code writing a line of code? It's almost nothing. So in a sense, AI itself almost kind of can't make money, um, unless the government ensures them some kind of monopoly. Now you can use that AI and use it as a tool to make money, I suppose, but AI at some point will just be like the calculator app on your phone. And when I took trigonometry, I had to buy a fucking $100 calculator, and now that shit's all free on your phone. So eventually AI will just be a free app on your phone, I suppose. Um, so I wouldn't invest in XAI, even though over a short period of time, maybe that'll make a bunch of money, but I don't see how that's necessarily sustainable. The thing that I like about um, X and Elon Musk in general, and the reason why I'm so bullish on Tesla is, and this is not all my thoughts. This is all just me parroting things that I've heard on Stephen Mark Ryan's channel, um, solving the money problem, and it's basically Elon Musk is the only person on the planet with all of the data required to solve all of the problems. So he's got all of the data for miles driven in a vehicle, and the electric cars are nothing more than wheeled robots. And those cars are learning how to interact in a three-dimensional environment. So he's got all of the data that a model needs to teach a robot how to interact with the the physical world, and he's just gonna take full self-driving once it's approved and slam that shit into the Optimus robots. You'll have to tweak it a little bit, but it's really no different than having a changing a wheeled robot into a legged robot. Um, so he's got all of the data that he needs to solve how to get robots to interact with the physical world, and the only thing left is how to get it to communicate with us. And he's got all of the X data from Twitter. So he's got all of the data that he needs for the large language models. He's got all of the driving data that he needs to teach robots how to interact with the physical world and basically operate with camera information only, none of that lidar horse shit. So I'm uh I'm not betting against anything that Elon Musk touches. And it's why I think that MicroStrategy and Tesla in, I don't know, 10, 20 years will be the Magnificent Two. They'll be at the two biggest companies in the S&P 500. And after that, it will be the Mag 7 will be uh, in order that they adopt Bitcoin treasuries. So if Apple adopts a Bitcoin treasury first, they'll be number 3. If Microsoft adopts a Bitcoin treasury, they'll be number 3. And then on down the list, which, as their eyes are open to adopting Bitcoin, that's basically, identifying who succeeds first. And anybody who doesn't adopt a Bitcoin treasury strategy just goes extinct. Jeremy says, "Yeah, Jeff mentioned he did it in HSA too, so it's tax advantage. The expense ratio is what prevents me from purchasing it." Yeah, talking about MSTY. Dr. Tone, what about just going in and out before the ex dividend date? That generally doesn't work. I'm assuming this one performs the same as any other dividend stock, because what tends to happen is the price of the dividend stock increases just before the dividend is paid out. And as soon as it's paid out, it drops again. So you really can't arbitrage dividend stocks in that way. If you can figure out a way to do it, then you can make some money. But um, that seems to be the way that all dividend stocks work. And yeah, it's a good idea, but I don't think it actually works. Colin says, heard that knees and shoulder movements still need work from Geo Holtz. Okay. I am confusion. Not sure what we're talking about. Oh, we're talking about the fucking robots. Um, I got so many knee and shoulder problems. I'm like, have I been talking about my physical therapy? Okay, yeah. So the Optimus robots still have knee and shoulder movement problems. Okay. Um, I'm optimistic about MicroStrategy in the same way that I'm optimistic about Tesla. Like every single brilliant engineer and coder wants to work for Elon Musk. They don't want to work for Microsoft. They don't want to work for Google. Um, so just in the war for talent, Tesla's winning. And I believe that the same thing is going to happen for MSTR. So MicroStrategy, Microsoft was eating their lunch for, years and years. And that's going to get flipped on its head. Like, who doesn't want to work for frickin' MicroStrategy? That's in the business intelligence software. You'd have to be insane if you're the best talent on the planet, and you can get frickin' stock options with MSTR. Like, what kind of idiot doesn't want to work for MicroStrategy? And especially, like, I'm showing my biases here, but anybody who's orange pilled automatically gets like, I don't know, your character selection, you just get a couple of extra charisma points uh in your character because you just grok reality, better than someone who's not orange pilled. And if I've got two applicants and one groks Bitcoin and the other doesn't, I'm just going with the Bitcoiner. It's just that simple. So MicroStrategy, when they when they hold more freaking Bitcoin than most countries, like the most brilliant people on the planet are going to want to work for Sailor. So I'm optimistic about the products and the ideas and solutions that MSTR will be able to come up with just because of that advantage of being Bitcoin only and just being Bitcoin everything. So I think I think Musk will be able to get the knees and shoulders to work. I'm not worried about that. Dr. Tone says Elon's just superhuman genius as well as Sailor. Yeah, I agree. Niz says, I really hope Meta gets into Bitcoin. All of the others will follow. Yeah, I quit Facebook a couple of years ago. I had some really excellent connections that I made on Facebook, and I have I've continued to communicate with a couple of people from that platform, but that fucking product is a complete dumpster fire. And, Zuckerberg is a spineless jellyfish. I mean, maybe with the jujitsu, maybe he's starting to develop a little bit of a spine, like, maybe he's understanding, uh, the constraints of reality or something better now, but he just seems kinda like a pussy. So, uh, I'm kinda spiteful. I just hope Meta goes the way of fucking AT&T and Kodak. Dr. Tone, I've heard going full on carnivore lion diet have helped a lot of people get major relief from arthritis, your joint pains, just FYI. Yeah, I did a solid month of strict carnivore, but I ended up adding fruit back in. I'm still getting a fairly good amount of muscle cramps, and on strict carnivore, that was really bad. Um, I may end up doing another round of fasting as well, but and now that I'm semi-retired, I may just take a couple of months and go out to, my favorite one of my favorite physical therapy channels is called, Squat University. So, I might see if I can just pay out of pocket and go see him for a couple of months and just live in a hotel or something. But, yeah, I eat about a pound, pound and a half of ribeye basically every single day. Breakfast is 4 eggs and steak, but, yeah, I can't help eating eating oranges and raspberries and blackberries and cherries and everything else I can kinda get my hands on too, but I do have a few cheat meals a week, so I can't I can't also say that if I was more strict, maybe it would solve all my arthritis problems, but yeah, I may have to give fasting and a strict lion diet another shot. Appreciate the comment. Yeah, mag-glycinate and electrolytes, also a great carnivore diet community. Yeah, exactly. I think Bitcoin, solves everything, and I think it cleans up your algorithm, it cleans up everything that you come into contact with, and, um, I'm almost surprised when I follow Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Oh, damn it, Saladino, and what's the Australian guy? Fuck, can't remember. Anyway, um, I'm almost surprised when I talk to a Bitcoiner who's not a carnivore, or when I talk to someone who's on a carnivore diet but isn't a Bitcoiner. I'm like, wait a minute, all this shit is supposed to overlap. But I think um, I don't know, all those roads kind of lead to each other. I think just because of like all the lies that fiat food and fiat medicine have introduced over the last 50 years is going to be exposed, and we'll actually get decent research. Uh, Anthony Chafee, thank you very much. That's the one. Yeah, I love those 3 guys. Um, and my I drink probably, I don't know, 40 ounces of electrolyte water, and I take, mag glycinate as well. And, my electrolytes are sodium and potassium, and then the mag glycinate. And for some reason, I just still have crazy muscle cramps. Niz says, "How much initial capital do you think someone would need to start with to generate 1K a week using the wheel?" So one of the TradFi guys that I follow thinks I'm a little bit too optimistic, thinking that 1% weekly returns is reasonable. Especially when you think about what that means over a year. That's 52% returns for a year. And if you are reinvesting all of the profits, it's actually insane because instead of it being 52% a year, it ends up turning into 67% a year, which would make someone getting those returns the greatest investor in the history of the world. So one, 0.01 for doing compound interest, reinvesting all of the profits every single week, that would be raising this to the 52nd power, and that's 67% returns, not 52. If you're reinvesting all the profits and then you're getting 1% on top of 1% every week. Uh, yeah, these returns are unheard of. So maybe the guy has a point. He was saying about 0.5% a week is more reasonable. If you can every once in a while get 1%, it kind of averages out. Sometimes you might get 0.25% a week, sometimes a half, sometimes a full percent. But he's a TradFi guy and he's not orange pilled. So I think if you're willing to diamond hands through the volatility of something like a mining stock or MSTR or a Semler, something like that, if you are willing to handle, like this is the 5K account that I started in, was it May of last year, I think? Let me just look. Yeah. So I started a 5K challenge somewhere, was it March? Yeah, maybe it was in March. And I promptly turned $5,000 in a month and a half into 3,000. So, uh, but just running the wheel and running the wheel, the price of Bitcoin came back and the price of the miners came back. And then I was back up to 5 grand again. And then I was up to, up about what, a little over 50% in March, April, May, June, July. Was that 4 months? And then, of course, I was back down to under 5K again. So this is kind of what the wheel is doing. It's gonna be up and down and up and down, but as long as it's up and to the right over a long period of time, then it's fine. Now, this bit of spike right here was me kind of cheating a little bit because I bought this once the price of my account got up from like 5 grand to 10 grand, I bought um, a leaps, not actually not a leaps, a long call on October 15th for 1100, and then the price of this soared right after I bought it. So this is kind of luck, but for the most part, if you can handle the ups and downs of the wheel, then I think like just so this is Wednesday, right? But even looking at something like CLSK, even in a small account, if I sell a cash secured put, this is only half of a week of a trading day. 1% returns would be 11 cents, right? On an $11 stock. And it's over 2% for half a week. I could sell the 10.5 strike and get 1% for half a week. I could sell the $10 strike and get 0.5% for half a week, which would average out to about 1. Now, granted, I'm not advocating doing this necessarily because the bid ask spread is $1, is 1 penny, and you're only making 5 cents. So that's like 20% of your profits are getting sucked out by the bid ask spread. So I'm not saying I would sell the $10 strike. This is just an example of how easy it is to get those kind of returns on Bitcoin derivatives. Now, it's not free money though, because here's what you're getting yourself into. You have to be able to you have to be able to stomach, if you entered into this position when CLSK in March 26 was $23, you have to be able to stomach weeks later it's, cut in half almost. And then it's back up to 20 and then it's back down to 15. So if you can stomach this kind of volatility, then you can run the wheel and I've always been able to, in the past, get at least 1% a week on these positions when But when I say 1%, I don't mean overall portfolio value because your overall value is gonna fluctuate wildly. When I say 1%, I mean return on capital. So when CLSK is $20 a share, I should be able to get $23 in premium that week. When my 100 shares of CLSK is only worth $14, I'm only gonna be able to get 14 or excuse me, yeah, $14 a share. I'm only gonna be able to get $14 a week, and my overall account value will have collapsed by, what, 40 frickin' percent, but I'm still going to be able to collect 1% of whatever it's worth every single week, and, it's actually even much more than that. I think to these TradFi guys, saying 1% sounds excessive, but I think it's pretty conservative. If I sell at the money, and this is almost 3% for half a week, it's kind of insane. Um, but the implied volatility for these stocks is changing all of the time. So sometimes you'll be able to get 1% easy. Sometimes you're just like, oh, damn, I can barely get 1% at this strike. But yeah, I think running the wheel. So actually, I didn't actually answer the question. The question was, how much capital do you need to generate $1,000 a week? Well, my baseline is trying to get 1% a week. So if you divide 1,000 by zero point zero 0.01 and move the decimal place over, you need about 100 grand. 100 grand and it would, if you can get 1% a week, would get you $1,000 a week. But you have to figure in the bear market, right? So if you're buying in at the top, you have to ask yourself, okay, can I still get $1,000 a week when the value of my portfolio drops by 50%? That was kind of like my baseline. I basically said, oh, you know what? I think I can basically quit my job with about 500,000. And I told my wife that, and she's like, nah, double it. I'm like, okay, fuck. Um, but that does make more sense. If you got $1 million, you're getting 1% a week. Was that like 10,000 a week? But then your account drops by 500,000. Okay, you're still getting 5 grand a week. You have to project what you think the worst case scenario is for that account. So, um, if you think you absolutely need 100,000 to generate 1K a week, then maybe get 200,000 together in case the price of Bitcoin collapses by 50% in short order. So Dr. Zay says, what is the carnivore diet equivalent of being orange pilled? I.e., how were you convinced? Um, I think when you become orange pilled, you just kind of see the glitch in the matrix of what the fiat money system is. And when I look at the kind of like the errors in the source code of what our diets have become, I think that's what convinced me. Like, um, who was it? I think Saifedean published a book from an author. I haven't read. I think was it Fiat Food or something. But and then I think it was Ken Berry and Dr. Chafee talk about when humans survived the ice age, they weren't eating plants. So at the very least, you have to admit that humans can thrive and survive the most harsh conditions that the world has to offer, just probably almost exclusively eating meat. um, and then you know in a fiat world, you have to figure out a way to have a big enough army to invade other countries and take their gold. And the only way to do that and be able to, store perishable food and 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 feed your expendable soldiers. Like, you don't have to feed them well. You only have to feed them well enough to get them to survive the battle. And you do that with agriculture. You do that with plants. So, I think all of the fiat uh, money has contaminated all of the research. So, um, the food pyramid is complete horseshit. Um, like when they came out and said eggs were bad for you, that was just because eggs became more expensive. So they're like, well, how do we exclude this from the inflation index? Like, people are realizing that their paychecks won't buy healthy foods like eggs. Oh, well, we'll just say eggs are unhealthy because they have cholesterol in them. So I don't believe that any of the demonization of animal products is necessarily based on good science. And my brother's actually a personal trainer, and of course he has to take the nutrition courses or whatever. And he's like, "Well, what study, can I cite you a study that proves that, sugar's not harmful?" And I'm like, "No, because I don't believe in any of the studies that say that shit." Um, if you tell me that there's a research company that's on the frickin' Bitcoin standard, and in 2030 they come out with a research that says that sugar's not bad for you, like, maybe I'll consider it. But yeah, companies just trying to generate profits by processing food and convincing us that seed oils and all other shit is good for you. Uh, we'll see. Hopefully, the research, Bitcoin will clean up research over the next 50 years, and we'll actually get some trustworthy data. But until fiat is scourged and just or scoured from the planet, and every industry that's been infiltrated with it gets cleaned up, I'm not convinced by any of the vegan research. Oh, so I didn't even check the 5K account. I don't think there's anything I need to do here because I only have this one MicroStrategy position that I can even sell covered calls against. Yeah, there's nothing for me to do here. I've already got this 221 covered call, and it's the only position I can take, so I can't add anything in here, even though it's today's green. I sold it for 8, and it's worth 14. So MicroStrategy will either be over or under 500 by 221, and then I'll have to shit or get off the pot with this trade. Dr. Zay, very interesting stuff. Thanks for that. I am orange pilled, but haven't really looked into carnivore. Yeah, check out any of those guys. Ken Berry, Dr. Chafee, Dr. Saladino. Um, and I think the other thing is heavy lifting. I'm not a big guy, so my version of heavy lifting is probably a little bit different than anyone else's. But there's a YouTube channel called Starting Strength that is very good. They also have a book that I downloaded that I haven't read yet. But the first sentence of the book is physical strength is the most important thing in life. So, riding a bike, if you enjoy it, is great, but riding a bike just makes you better at riding a bike. I'm not convinced that it's as beneficial as just lifting the heaviest shit you can get your hands on. So, between eating more meat and lifting heavy, I think those are the two main things that you can do for your health. Forrester, what's up, brother? Tried Sumo Citrus yesterday, super delicious. Yeah, man, I was a little bit disappointed with the last couple of batches that I got, but they're still better than the frickin' navel oranges. Um, and that reminds me, I gotta hit the store and grab another batch of them. But I think I got the first batch of the year, and I think they picked them a little too soon, they weren't ripe. Um, but yeah, even a bad Sumo is generally about 50% better than a frickin' navel orange from Florida or California. I think they I think they keep all the good oranges for themselves, and they ship all the shitty ones to Maryland. And, looking forward to talking to you next week, brother. Alright, so that's all the trading that I'll be doing today. Um, and I think we're all caught up on the chats.